Swastiastu. This is Balinese welcome greetings, means may God bless all of us here. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. May peace be upon us. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the parallel thematic session of High-Level Forum on Multi-Stakeholder Partnerships 2024. May we have your big round of applause for all of us here this morning? Thank you. And the theme scaling up SDGs, financing effectiveness, stronger commitments, and greater actions. Hosted by the Ministry of National Development Planning of Indonesia. And we are truly honored to have such an esteemed audience here today. And welcome once again to all of you to Bali, Indonesia. My name is Putu Desi, and I'm so honored to be your host for today's event. Before we begin, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to extend our deep appreciation and respect to our honored guests who have left messages through video. His Excellency Mr. Lee Junhua, United Nations Under Secretary General for Economic and Social Affairs. Ms. Sariha Moya, National Secretary of Planning Ecuador. Distinguished speakers and also moderator, and all of our distinguished delegates and participants of the High-Level Forum on Multi-Stakeholder Partnerships 2024. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Ministry of National Development Planning is hosting High-Level Forum on Multi-Stakeholder Partnerships 2024 in Bali International Convention Center. This forum is expected to serve as a platform for exchanging ideas, learning, and collaboration, where multi-stakeholders can unite in the global efforts to ensure adherence to development effectiveness principles in bringing out a transformative change. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my greatest pleasure to begin the session with keynote speeches for today. Let us watch the video remarks from His Excellency Mr. Lee Junhua, United Nations and the Secretary General for Economic and Social Affairs.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to join you at this high-level forum on multi-stakeholder partnerships for development. Today, we gather to discuss how we can work together more effectively, more inclusively, and more powerfully to tackle the global challenges we face and to speed up our progress towards the achieving these sustainable development goals. As we know, the world is off track to achieving the SDGs. Current projections estimated that almost 600 million people will live in extreme poverty in 2030. More than half of them are women. 2023 was the hottest year on record by a significant margin, and the fossil fuel use reached a record high. Financing challenges are at the heart of the sustainable development crisis. Financing gaps are widening. Developing countries do not have access to affordable financing at anywhere near the required scale. The budget allocations, investments, national and international policy frameworks, and the governance arrangements are still not fully aligned with the SDGs. Several ideas and proposals are being put forward to address these challenges and transform the financing to rescue the SDGs. To deliver on these ideas and proposals, we need a reinvigorated multilateral system centered on collaboration and trust. The time is now to choose whether to succeed together or to fail together. But the message is clear. Failure is not our option. we must rally around the ambitious reforms. This high-level forum provides a timely opportunity to reflect on the critical aspects of such reforms, particularly in the three thematic areas of focus: advancing development through the innovative financing, enhancing welfare and sustainability through the sustainable economy, and the multi-stakeholder partnerships for strengthening South-South and triangular cooperation. First, innovative financing. Designed and delivered well, with a focus on development impact, can help tap new resources and broaden the overall envelope of the financing available to deliver the much-needed SDG investment push, including in the least developed countries. Second, building a sustainable economy should mean more than just protecting the environment. It should be about incorporating all dimensions of sustainability in policy choices across sectors and geographies to ensure we create economies that benefit everyone everywhere without compromising our collective future. Third, the volume and the reach of the South-South and the triangular cooperation have been growing significantly, with the COVID-19 pandemic illustrating the transformative potential of the South-South cooperation in particular. Ongoing efforts to strengthen the measurement of these flows at national, regional, and global levels are vital to ensure their effectiveness can be further strengthened. Considerations of these three focus areas should be in the context of the upcoming global discussions, including at the Summit of the Future in coming September and the fourth International Conference on Financing for Development and the second World Summit on Social Development to be held in 2025. I'm confident that today's discussions will contribute to strengthening the spirit of the global partnership and solidarity required to rescue the SDGs. I wish you a successful forum and look forward to receiving the outcomes of your discussions.
Thank you, His Excellency Mr. Lee Junhua, for the keynote speech. Moving on to the next keynote speech, let us also watch the video remarks from Ms. Sariha Moya, National Secretary of Planning of Republic of Ecuador.
Excellencies, esteemed delegates, and colleagues, I am pleased to join you today at a high-level forum on multi-stakeholder partnership on behalf of Ecuador. Through this video, I want to address with you a pressing issue that threatens our collective progress towards a sustainable and equitable future: the urgent need to scale up financing for the SDGs, which are essential for the well-being of our planet. Since the adoption of the SDGs in 2015, we have witnessed significant progress on resource mobilization. Developed countries have committed to allocate 0.7% of their national income to international cooperation. However, not all have managed to achieve this goal. It is essential to evaluate both the real capacity to channel these resources to developing countries and the capability of developing countries to execute these resources efficiently and effectively. It is also crucial to address these disparities to achieve the established goals. Without a doubt, we, as recipient countries, can make a significant progress from our institutions. A robust national planning aligned with the SDGs is a cornerstone for maximizing the impact of ODA. I am pleased to highlight that in Ecuador, our National Development Plan presents a 94.4% of alignment to the SDGs. demonstrating a clear strategic vision and a comprehensive approach to addressing not only the country's most pressing challenges, but also the global ones. Ecuador has adopted a multi-level governance approach, implementing the SDGs, in which local governments play a fundamental role. Or NDP serve as a strategic framework that articulates the actions of all levels of governments, ensuring that local actions contribute to the achievement of global goals. It is essential to have innovative financing mechanisms that respond to realities of developing countries. It becomes crucial to promote an inclusive approach that considers the capacities of each nation to execute funds, although this must be based on common standards for planning and monitoring. A single parameter that ignores individual needs and unique characteristics of developing countries must also be avoided. As a reference, in Ecuador, we have sought innovative financing alternatives such as the issuance of the region's first sovereign social bond for housing for $400 million, which allowed thousands of Ecuadorians to access to their first home. In addition to the debt for nature swap operation, where an international bond swap was carried out to achieve a reduction in the public debt stock of around $970 million. Part of the service of the new debt is allocated to finance projects of public interest for the benefit of the Galapagos Islands. Our national sectoral policies, plans, and commitments are also aligned with our NDP. In this context, the development of our second National Determined Contribution, NDC, represents a significant milestone, with an action plan that guarantees coherence with the SDGs and the mobilization of financial resources in the future through green and blue bonds. This NDC, scheduled for presentation at the end of the year, will consolidate our search for sustainable solutions to the challenges of climate change. Despite the efforts to secure financing, Ecuador, like many other developing countries, requires fair and equitable access to development funds. Ecuador is establishing clear and consistent standards for the allocation and the monitoring of these funds. Likewise, standardized definitions and the application of the ODA should be integrated into each country's strategic planning in order to be able to evaluate the real impact of these resources in our economies. As a developing country, we have understood the importance of adopting responsible internal measures that can strengthen our institutional capacity, ensure current income in order to generate economic stability through strategic political decisions. We must foster the active participation of our stakeholders, such as the private sector, academia, and civil society, and renew our commitment to multilateralism as a fundamental pillar for achieving our national and global objectives. Finally, as we approach the Summit of the Future, developed countries will renew their commitment to the implementation of the 2030 Agenda, and developing countries have great expectations for the opportunities this may generate to guarantee the mobilization of the resources needed to accelerate the implementation of the SDGs. In conclusion, the challenges of SDGs financing cannot be solved in isolation. We require collective action based on management, trust, and transparency. Only through a concerted effort we can overcome these challenges and fulfill our promise of a sustainable future for all, leaving no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rihamoya. Okay. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, and now we are moving on to the main agenda of this parallel thematic session on scaling up SDGs financing effectiveness, stronger commitment, greater actions. And now, let us welcome and give the floor to our moderator for this panel, Mr. Yanuar Nugroho, National SDGs Secretariat Indonesia. Please come up to the stage. Give your a warm welcome to our moderator this session.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, very good morning to all of you. I'm Yanuar Nugroho from the National Secretariat of SDGs Implementation in the Ministry of National Development Planning of Indonesia. Today, we have a very, I believe, very interesting panel. But before we start, let me give you some context. First, the so-called, or what we now know as SDGs, probably is the most ambitious global agenda ever undertaken, aiming at least three things. One, eradicating poverty. Second, protecting the planet. And third, ensuring prosperity for all. However, if you look at the screen, now at the midpoint, there are two concerns. One, you can see in the screen. The UN reported that at the global level, only 15% of SDGs have been achieved. Only 15%. Even in Asia and the Pacific, this number is more concerning. Only 14.4%. It means we are lagging behind 32 to 35 years in achieving the SDGs. That is the first concern. The second concern is how should we finance SDGs? How should we finance sustainable development? In 2015, UNCTAD estimated $2.5 trillion per year. That is the annual funding gap, if you look at the screen, for achieving SDGs in developing countries. That was before COVID. And after COVID, that number increased 70% to 4.2 trillion per year. So I think this is clear, the rationale why we gathered this morning, why we have this panel. We want to discuss how we can mobilize resources, how we can make sure it is effective in addressing the needs for sustainable development. So, if we look around, some solutions may be there, but we see some challenges. As we can see here, at least 5 challenges when it comes into financing sustainable development in Global South. One is the fragmented efforts across sectors. Second, insufficient multi-stakeholder partnerships. Next one is the weak institutional framework and governance. And I think we listened from Minister Moha previously. And then how we can make sure that resource mobilization and allocation is effective enough. And lastly, the need for gender-sensitive and people-centered approach. Okay? And I think this is more clear why we are all here to discuss this. This is not a seminar. This is a discussion, conversation among friends. But we have a very good set of speakers here. And I would like to invite, join me in the stage. Firstly, Excellency Guilain Nyembo Mvisia, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Planning from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Please, Excellency. Second, Excellency Francesco de Assis Aguirre Aranda, Ambassador of Spain to Indonesia. Excellency Ambassador, please. And then I would call her Ibu Gita Syabarwal, the UN Resident Coordinator in Indonesia. Ibu Gita. Mr. Benny Lee, CEO of Tarato Foundation Indonesia. Please, Benny. Ms. Mario Toson from GPDC, co-chair of GPDC. Please. And last but not least, my friend Pak Jeffrey Cohen. Please, Pak Jeffrey, join us. Okay. I know maybe for some of us it's rather weird sitting in this setting, but as I promised earlier that I'm not going to make this session boring for the participants. So if I may start with maybe a couple of rounds before we invite the panel. Excellencies here, I would like to start by asking you about the current state of SDGs or development financing in the world, from your perspective, particularly in developing countries. If I may start with Ibu Gita from the UN, maybe you can say something, Ibu Gita. This is the first round of question.
Thank you.
Don't worry, I have a couple. So,
Thank you, Pak Yanvar. It's great to be here, and this topic is very relevant. And you did a great job by setting the global context. I want to step in. I want to set the context from two perspectives. I want to speak in terms of what progress looks like, SDG progress, because progress will determine SDG financing, right? You need to know where you are vis-a-vis the goals for you to determine financing. And secondly, I want to speak from the perspective of Asia Pacific and the two countries that I have served as the resident coordinator, Thailand and now Indonesia, right? So that's the context that I'm going to speak to. In terms of progress, if you look at progress for Asia Pacific, I noted that you quoted a figure slightly lower than global averages. Asia Pacific is doing better than global averages.
oh really?
Yes, according to the 2024 report.
Okay.
It's slightly higher, not much higher. It's about 17% of goals and targets of
So
indicators
the number needs
that
to
are
be
on
addressed,
track.
yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
2024. But that doesn't mean much, right? It's still extremely low. However, if you look at Indonesia's performance, and I know you and your team have played a key role in assessing SDG progress, we see Indonesia demonstrating very robust performance with 62% of your goals on track. And none of the goals are off track, which is interesting. Even Thailand doesn't have that.
Okay.
Right? They're all moving in the right direction. And from where I see there are three goals in particular that need major acceleration. It's goal 2 with nutrition. It's goal clean water and sanitation, goal 6. And then goal 7 on energy intensity and renewables. Those are the three where you've got roughly about half of your indicators that need major acceleration. So the agenda, what we need to bear in mind is one of acceleration. How do we finance, create, mobilize financing for acceleration?
Okay.
Similarly, when we look at Thailand, well, very, very strong performance, 42% of the indicators on track. And it's these countries that are pushing up the Asia Pacific averages, your country and Thailand together, amongst others. Now, having said that, we've also seen a very encouraging trend across governments in assessing what their financing gap looks like.
Yep.
Because you need evidence for you to mobilize. And when you look at the financing gap for Asia Pacific, according to SCAP, it's $5 per person per day of additional financing that is required for meeting the SDGs.
$5 per person per day.
$5 per person per day. For Indonesia, your assessment is suggesting $1.7 trillion, which is just over the GDP of the country, right? And in many ways achievable over a 7-8 year period. For Thailand, pre-COVID, it was 400 billion. And obviously, post-COVID, it would have gone up, but just about the GDP of the country. Their GDP is about 500 billion. So that's the kind of financing that is required. From where I sit, I believe that we need a whole of society approach led by government, by bringing on board private sector, capital markets, philanthropies like represented by Benny here, developed countries, with their ODA commitments.
Okay.
We need this whole of society approach under the leadership of government to take this forward. And let me come to my last 2 points on this. In terms of, if you look at emerging economies like Indonesia and others are lucky. They've got deep private sectors, they've got a dynamic capital market, You've got reasonably low fiscal deficit, very low fiscal deficit. You've also got IFIs that are keen to lend to the country because it's risk-free, right? So your ability, emerging economies have the ability to mobilize financing, which a lot of countries with high debt find it challenging. And we've got 60 such countries with high debt. And I want to end with one point. It's not just financing. It's technology transfer that is needed also for deep decarbonization, I believe. It's access to markets that are needed because these are more sustainable. And finally, it's about capacity building, right? So, and this is where your South-South triangular cooperation becomes important. So it's financing plus all of this. And I'm going to pause and hand it back.
Thank you, Ibu Gita. I think it's a very interesting perspective from the UN looking at this SDGs achievement, but also how different administration, different governments address this financing gap. I would like to go to you, Jeffrey. You're working with the USAID, right? And how do you see this? How do you see USAID, for example, looking at this challenge, development financing? How do you contribute? I know that everyone has 10 minutes, but for you, I will 5 minutes first. Second half will be another 5 minutes. So don't go through your notes, but just focus on this question. How do you see this financing, development financing gap, and how do you address this from your perspective?
Thank you very much, and selamat pagi to everyone. I'm Jeff Cohen from USAID Indonesia. USAID for 63 years has been providing official development assistance all over the world. And I think it's always going to be a challenge to meet the funding goals. That said, we have to be creative and we have to work together, and I think that's the important theme of the conference here these 2 days. USAID, for example, in Indonesia, has been a consistent funder of development projects, starting out in the early 60s and 70s with loan portfolios and transitioning to capacity building and partnerships. I think the key is to, of course, we need to try to increase the official development assistance spent across the world. It's not always easy, and we all saw during COVID how we had to turn internally to provide resources to get our own countries through a very challenging time. As a development partner with countries around the world, our development assistance, official development assistance, is at an all-time high, $66 billion in 2023. But that number pales in comparison to the transfers from the private sector to the developing world. In the 1960s, it wasn't so. Official development assistance was how the world engaged with developing countries. Now, it's not just official government assistance, but also private sector foreign direct investment, which from the United States is about $160 billion per year now. And so those resources, which are driving employment, investing in economies, providing resources for families to do better, I think the investment of those resources can also be shaped in a way that can help push forward the Sustainable Development Goals. And from USAID's perspective, we like to partner with the private sector philanthropies, with local governments, and of course with local communities to ensure that every investment dollars, like the minister or the secretary from Ecuador mentioned, are dealt with management, trust, and transparency. I thought those were 3 key words. Investments have to be made transparently, both from a development partner like USAID, but also from host governments, also from the private sector and philanthropies, so that every dollar is spent better. I think there's more optimization about how you spend money, how it's done transparently, how you use evidence to ensure that investments are done in a way that have the most impact. And I'll stop there so that others can participate.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeffrey. I would like to go back later in the second round on ensuring effectiveness, as you mentioned, because I think that's very important. Before I turn to the minister, I would like to invite Pak Beni first. Pak Beni from Tanoto. Pak Beni, from where you sit, how do you see this development financing gap, how much it matters, and how from Tanoto Foundation, for example, I know that you have been working a lot with the government of Indonesia, with the UN, but maybe you can share with us from your perspective.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. Just a bit of a brief introduction. I'm Benny, CEO of Thanato Foundation. For those who are not aware, Thanato Foundation has a history of more than 40 years. We started more like a charity, but has since grown into a global philanthropy. From where I sit, I would say that I'm both very concerned, but at the same time very hopeful about this current state. Why I'm very concerned? Thanato Foundation operates worldwide. We have an annual giving of about 30 to 40 million US dollars. Not insignificant. We are actually one of the largest, if not the largest, around the region. But if you think about it, it's actually very small compared to the annual giving across the world, 800 billion US dollars of annual giving across the world. And even that, if you add up all the philanthropies, you will be far from the target. You will be only a drop in the ocean of the gap that Park Yanua, you mentioned just now, 4.2 trillion that's needed per year in order to move us towards achieving SDGs by 2030. So there's this huge gap that we are talking about, which is why I'm very concerned. But at the same time, I'm very hopeful because forums like this bring people together and bring together multi-stakeholders, just like the theme about partnership for multi-stakeholder relations. Because it is through partnership, through stakeholders, that we can bridge this gap. Now, Thanato Foundation has, of course, started on this journey. We work with UN, we work with USAID to really bring about, crowd in resources, but beyond that, not just resources, but also expertise, knowledge, and networks in order for us to bridge this gap. I'll just cite two very simple examples. In the issue of stunting, Indonesia has a huge national issue in terms of stunting, where children are basically shortchanged because of nutrition, right from day one when they are born. We have, over the years, worked very closely with partners. So one particular project, the MDTF, Multi-Donor Trust Fund, that we work together with World Bank and Gates Foundation through a donation of $2 million US dollars, matched by Gates Foundation, $2 million US dollars. We have managed to unlock $420 million US dollars of loan from World Bank to contribute to Indonesia's stunting prevention. So that's just one example, how different stakeholders with different risk appetite come together and structure a kind of a financing tool to help a very national problem here. Another example, USAID. We've collaborated with USAID on this program called PASTI, Partnership to Accelerate Stunting Prevention in Indonesia, where we come in together with USAID and also some private sector partners. For example, PT Aman Mineral and PT Bank Central Asia, Bakti Barito in Indonesia, a foundation, to kind of crowd in a lot of resources to help in this stunting prevention. Now, what has that meant? What has that led to? The Indonesian government has also put in 3.8 billion US dollars for this effort. So I'll just stop here. I think we are hopeful because by doing some of this partnership, multi-stakeholder partnership, we can make a difference. And that's what we really need at this point in time.
Thank you, Pak Benny. I think this is very interesting examples from Thanato. We'll get back to you later. But now I would like to invite Excellency Mr. Gulain, Minister. Maybe if you can share with us the most pressing funding challenges in your country in achieving the SDGs. Maybe you can share with us.
Merci pour la parole. Alors, comme tous les pays en développement pour la République démocratique du Congo, ce challenge sur la réalisation des objectifs de développement durable, qui se résume en réalité sur la question d'éradication de la pauvreté, la protection de l'environnement et puis la question de la prospérité pour tous. Alors vous imaginez, quand vous prenez tous ces thèmes-là, ça représente beaucoup pour un pays qui doit déjà faire des efforts pour remplir tous ces devoirs-là. L'éradication de la pauvreté, il faut regarder déjà en termes de nombre pour un pays comme la RDC, 100 millions à peu près d'habitants. Et la question de protection de la planète, vous imaginez tous les potentiels qu'il y a en RDC et où on demande à la République démocratique du Congo de mettre ça à la disposition du monde. Donc ça demande des sacrifices au niveau des populations locales qui doivent, par exemple, changer leur modèle économique. Par exemple, arrêter d'utiliser les bois pour que la forêt puisse aider à l'absorption du gaz carbonique. Donc la question de financement est vraiment un grand challenge pour nous en tant que pays. Et au niveau interne, nous travaillons sur la mobilisation accrue des ressources pour permettre justement d'avoir une grande part que nous puissions mettre au niveau des investissements pour permettre justement à travailler sur des projets pertinents pour agir sur des populations le moins nanties et donc participer à l'accélération des ODD. Alors, vous avez la question de financement au niveau des partenaires. Ça, c'est une question générale, comme ça a été dit encore tantôt, où les partenaires des pays très développés qui ne sont pas toujours au rendez-vous de leurs engagements. Donc, encore une fois, une plaidoirie pour que nous puissions avancer sur cette question-là. La question de l'accès au financement sur le marché international ou des bailleurs de fonds aussi. Une grande question pour les pays en développement et aussi pour la République démocratique du Congo, quand on regarde tout ce qui est conditions autour de l'accès à ces fonds. La République démocratique du Congo peut en parler parce que nous venons de terminer un programme avec le FMI, ou avec 6 revues, où nous avons été capables de le faire, mais encore une fois, avec des conditions qui ne sont pas toujours faciles. Donc, la grande question de financement vraiment demande beaucoup de transparence parce que, comme vous le savez, aujourd'hui, nous ne savons pas toujours comment est-ce que ces financements au niveau mondial est répartis, que ce soit au niveau des projets, mais que ce soit aussi au niveau des différents pays. Donc, encore une fois, cette question de faire en sorte que tout le monde puisse s'investir dans la grande question du partenariat mondial pour qu'en réalité, nous puissions travailler sur la question aussi d'efficacité de ces aides-là, pour enfin, à partir du moment où nous pouvons travailler sur l'évaluation de nos besoins de financement nous-mêmes, parce qu'en réalité, la grande question, c'est aussi nous-mêmes de pouvoir nous organiser et de savoir quel est notre besoin en termes de financement et voir les financements qui sont disponibles et analyser les gaps qui peuvent se trouver entre les deux. Donc cette grande question reste valable pour tous les pays et j'espère qu'autour de ces débats, nous pouvons trouver des voies et moyens pour voir le milieu. Merci.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Very insightful, your story about Congo. Ibu Mari, I know that you've been working with the GPEDC, Ibu. So again, of course, firstly, if you can share with us, from your perspective, this challenge of development financing, of course. But second, also how, more on the methodology, more on the approach you evaluate this, because you always work with the effective development cooperation. 5 minutes, Ibu? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I think you need to turn to. Yep. Yeah.
Is it working now? Thank you.
It is.
First of all, I want to say that if everyone is not aware of GPEDC, that is a global platform for delivering on development effectiveness. And what we are trying to do at all times is also making sure that we are building building an impactful partnerships to the SDGs. And being the co-chair of GPEDC is something that I'm very happy and proud of. And we also have another co-chair of GPEDC here on the stage, and that is the DRC. And I also share this co-chair role with our host, Indonesia. But in addition to being the co-chair, I'm also SIDA's Deputy Director General, so I also represent Sweden here today. And to be 100% honest, when I listened to the keynote speaker of Ecuador, she said that they have produced a national development plan, they are aligning their work to the SDGs, they're also measuring that. they have a and that is seen as their strategic framework. She was talking about the importance of innovative financing. She was talking about trust and transparency, which was also mentioned by USAID, and she was talking about partnership. And to be 100% honest, that is really what I wanted to say, but that was a very short answer, so I would like to elaborate a little bit more.
Sure.
First of all, Sweden is a country that are still providing more than 0.7% of ODA, so we are not only fulfilling the commitment, we are for the time being also exceeding that, and I'm very proud of that, of course. And even though I am super proud of everything that SIDA as a development agency is doing, it is clear to everyone working for SIDA that looking at ODA alone, that will never ever be enough to close the gap of the SDG funding. So what we are doing is that we are trying to make sure that we use the ODA fund smarter, so we can make sure that we can catalyze the funds and mobilize more capital by using ODA slightly different than what we have done in the past. We're also looking at the synergies between development cooperation, between investments, and between trade and so on, to make sure that we can maximize the different synergies. And that is also something that I hope that you will see more of when it comes to what we will be doing as Sweden in the next coming years. But then to give you a few examples of what SIDA is doing, we are convening an alliances of Swedish investors for sustainable development. And that is also something that has inspired the UN. So they have the equivalent, and that is called the Global Investors for Sustainable Development. And what they are doing is that they are also developing indicators for companies and investors. And just to give you one example, we have one indicators for investors that is on percentage of portfolio aligned with sustainable development and the SDGs. But, and another thing that SIDA is doing, we are supporting the work of integrated national financing framework, the INFFs, which I also think is very important and a great potential here. We are also supporting partner country reforms to improve the business and investment climates, inclusive markets, as well as well-functioning institutions. And in this regard, I would really like to highlight the importance of combating corruptions, because if that is not addressed, no results will be achieved. And then just to maybe wrap up on this question, I want to say that even though it's so important to look at how we can mobilize more funds, it is equally important to look at the effectiveness of all types of financial flow. So we try to make sure that we talk about quantity, but we also talk about quality. We are talking about making sure that the finance for development agenda and the development effectiveness are seen as a complement to one another, and they are not at all in competition with one another. And my very last point then would be that from a GPDC perspective, we have a new monitoring now in place, which is a rigorous data collection. And it is obvious that a data collection in itself is a good starting point, but without many interactive discussions at country level, no results or sustainable results will be achieved. And we are now also working, making sure that everything that is done within the GPDC will feed into the finance for development agenda that is taking place next year in Spain. And then we will also make sure that we will focus on development effectiveness. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Last but not least in this first round, but also kicking off the second round, Ambassador Francisco. Now for you, I have two questions, because you are ending this round and starting the next round, Ambassador. One, what do you think the successful strategies, practices, approach in international collaboration or cooperation that Spain can leverage to increase this SDGs financing gap or financing contribution? That's the first. And second, what can we learn from Spain? Ambassador, time is yours. For now, for you now, you have not 5, but maybe 8 minutes. It's okay.
Selamat pagi semuanya. Terima kasih banyak.
Can you speak a bit closer so that the interpreter can...
Voy a hablar en español.
Okay.
Nosotros tenemos la política oficial, como otros países donantes, de combinar la ayuda oficial al desarrollo, ODA, con el apoyo total al desarrollo sostenible, Total Official Support Sustainable Development. A través de un compromiso inquebrantable, España ha demostrado que es posible no solo cumplir con las metas establecidas por la comunidad internacional, sino también innovar y liderar en la movilización de recursos para alcanzar los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. Hoy deseo destacar cómo hemos avanzado en esta dirección, especialmente mediante la adopción del concepto de apoyo oficial total al desarrollo sostenible, TOSSD en inglés, que ha ampliado nuestras capacidades de financiación y permitido una colaboración más efectiva y equitativa entre naciones. La firmeza de España en su compromiso con el 0,7% del ingreso nacional bruto destinado a la ayuda oficial al desarrollo ha sido, sin duda, un pilar de nuestra política. Pero sabemos que la realidad actual demanda más que simples porcentajes. Demanda creatividad y nuevas formas de cooperación. Aquí es donde el TOSD ha cobrado una relevancia extraordinaria, pues nos ha permitido capturar una gama de flujos financieros más amplia, incluyendo inversiones privadas que, sin ser parte de la ayuda tradicional, son cruciales para el desarrollo sostenible. Pensemos, por ejemplo, en las inversiones en América Latina sobre proyectos de energía renovable, donde no solo se ha financiado, sino que se han movilizado recursos adicionales de socios privados. Estas inversiones no solo contribuyen a mitigar el cambio climático, sino que también llevan energía limpia a comunidades que antes no tenían acceso, generando un impacto tangible en el cumplimiento del ODS 7, energía asequible y no contaminante. Nuestra experiencia en América Latina se complementa con los esfuerzos desplegados en África, donde España ha asumido un papel destacado en el desarrollo rural y la seguridad alimentaria. Un ejemplo de esto es nuestra colaboración con la FAO en el Sahel, donde hemos canalizado recursos tanto a través de la ayuda tradicional como mediante mecanismos innovadores que incluyen microcréditos y seguros agrícolas. Estas iniciativas no solo proporcionan alimentos, sino que empoderan a los agricultores locales, quienes ahora pueden resistir mejor las adversidades del clima y asegurar el sustento para sus familias. Es un testimonio de cómo el TOSD nos permite captar y reforzar cada esfuerzo que España realiza, incluyendo aquellos que tradicionalmente no se habrían contabilizado bajo la ayuda oficial al desarrollo. Al reflexionar sobre los desafíos que enfrentamos, es esencial reconocer que el desarrollo no puede ser un esfuerzo aislado de un solo país o de una sola región. Por ello, España ha adoptado un enfoque de colaboración y multilateralismo que fortalece nuestro impacto global. Un ejemplo claro es nuestra participación en la Iniciativa Africana de Energía Renovable, AREI, donde a través del TOSD hemos podido integrar y coordinar nuestros esfuerzos con los de otras naciones y organizaciones internacionales. Esto ha permitido que proyectos de energía renovable, como los desarrollados en Kenia o Etiopía, se lleven a cabo con una financiación robusta y transparente, capturada en su totalidad por el TOSD, lo que a su vez fortalece la confianza y la cooperación entre todos los actores involucrados. No podemos olvidar el papel fundamental que juegan las instituciones en la gestión y distribución eficaz de estos fondos. España ha demostrado un fuerte compromiso en fortalecer tanto sus propias capacidades institucionales como las de los países receptores. En ese sentido, el uso del TOSD ha sido esencial para documentar y medir estos esfuerzos. Por ejemplo, en la región Asia-Pacífico, hemos trabajado para apoyar al Gobierno de Filipinas en la mejora de los sistemas de salud pública, donde la inversión en infraestructura sanitaria y capacitación de personal médico ha sido vital, especialmente en tiempos de crisis como la pandemia COVID-19. Estas acciones, capturadas bajo el TOSD, reflejan no solo nuestro compromiso con el ODS 3, salud y bienestar, sino también nuestra capacidad de adaptación y respuesta rápida ante emergencias globales. En Iberoamérica, nuestras inversiones se han dirigido también a la educación y al fortalecimiento de capacidades, donde España ha jugado un papel de mentor, compartiendo su experiencia y conocimiento a través de la Secretaría General Iberoamericana, SEGIP. Estas acciones, que incluyen desde becas educativas hasta la creación de redes de colaboración académica, son registradas y destacadas bajo el TOSD, lo que nos permite no solo evaluar su impacto, sino también replicar estos modelos en otras regiones del mundo. En países como Colombia y Perú, estas iniciativas han mejorado significativamente la calidad de la educación superior, abriendo nuevas oportunidades para miles de jóvenes. El camino que hemos recorrido hasta ahora con el TUSD nos ha enseñado valiosas lecciones. Nos ha permitido ser más transparentes, más responsables y más eficientes en el uso de los recursos que destinamos al desarrollo. Al capturar un panorama completo de nuestras contribuciones, el TUSD asegura que no solo estamos cumpliendo con nuestras obligaciones, sino que lo estamos haciendo de manera que maximiza el impacto y garantiza que cada euro invertido realmente contribuya a la creación de un mundo más justo y más sostenible. Nuestro enfoque no se limita a la acción a corto plazo. Nos preparamos para el futuro conscientes de que los desafíos son dinámicos y requieren una adaptación constante. En este sentido, España ha demostrado una flexibilidad creciente, redirigiendo recursos y ajustando prioridades conforme las necesidades globales evolucionan. Durante la pandemia, por ejemplo, el TUSD fue crucial para documentar y comunicar la rápida respuesta de España en apoyo a sistemas de salud debilitados en América Latina, el Caribe y otras regiones. Igualmente, en el Pacífico, nuestros esfuerzos para financiar la adaptación al cambio climático en pequeñas islas en desarrollo que enfrentan amenazas existenciales han sido capturados bajo el TUSD, asegurando que el mundo reconozca la importancia de estas inversiones. En conclusión, y ya acabo, España ha demostrado que con visión, compromiso y las herramientas adecuadas como el TUSD es posible no solo cumplir con la ODS, sino hacerlo de una manera que amplifique los beneficios para todas las naciones involucradas. Nuestro esfuerzo es un ejemplo que puede ser replicado por otros, porque en un mundo tan interconectado como el nuestro, el éxito de un país en el logro de los ODS es un triunfo para todos. Sigamos avanzando juntos, apoyándonos en instrumentos como el TUSD para construir un futuro que refleje nuestras aspiraciones comunes de paz, prosperidad y sostenibilidad para todos. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Exactly 8 minutes. Thank you. Thank you for giving the time. Now, we'll go to the second round. This is a bit shorter than the first round because I want to focus on ensuring effectiveness. Ambassador has started, and actually the minister already started as well when sharing the experience of Congo. But I would like to ask you, from your perspective again, from your organization, from where you sit, how do you think we can, on our own and together in this collaboration, in this multi-stakeholder partnership, ensure effectiveness of this development financing? Ibu Gita?
Thank you very much, Pak Yanbar. You know, when I said the whole,
can you be a bit closer?
Sorry,
Yeah.
when I said the whole of society approach,
Yep.
led by government, which brings other development partners together, including the private sector and capital markets, I think in many ways, government needs to play a key role in ensuring effectiveness. Innovative financing instruments that you bring to bear for mobilizing additional financing, not just government budgets, right? Government budgets are limited. In a fiscally constrained environment, post-COVID, all governments are fiscally constrained.
Sure.
All of you, all governments are bringing to bear additional financing. The minute you bring to bear additional financing, governments need to play a key role in ensuring effectiveness, right? Aligning it to budget priorities. And exactly the point that you raised in your opening remarks, very essential to make sure that every dollar that you're putting in is getting you higher rates of return. That's what you're aiming for, with the work that we are doing, the UN is doing here in Indonesia with the Ministry of Finance in thematic bonds. Every dollar invested is getting us $4+ rate of return. That's what we want, right? And this is where governments come in. So to me, it's governments that are critical to this dialogue on effectiveness.
Thank you very much. And Jeffrey.
Thank you so much. Downstairs in the exhibition hall are 3 examples of how USAID is working here in Indonesia to be more effective. First and foremost, it's working with the private sector. Downstairs, we have OFI, Olam Food Ingredients, which started in Nigeria and has a big operation here in Indonesia, working with USAID on cacao and coffee production, and also Mars, well known for its Snickers and M&Ms and Dove bars, also in the chocolate sector. Those are two examples of how USAID is using its dollars more effectively by working with the private sector, with the government of Indonesia, because Bappenas, the planning ministry, is our partner on these two projects. You have the off-taker buying cacao, chocolate, from farmers who are doing things in the right way, in a more environmentally sustainable way, allowing for training in the field level, the farm level, for shade growth cacao and coffee that feeds the market, providing livelihoods for the farmers at a higher level, and joining development dollars from USAID and private sector investment dollars from the companies who are looking to increase their brand recognition by working better with communities. It's a win-win-win situation for everyone in partnership with the government.
I want to dig a bit deeper. How did you start engaging with the policymakers, with the people around?
So USAID aligns with the Bappenas, the planning ministry, on its development plan. All of our projects are in line with the government development plan. We work with the private sector who are interested to work with USAID through an open solicitation process. But most importantly, we look for those areas where there can be economic growth in an environmentally sustainable way that improves climate change impact or reduces the impact of climate change. This is how we make smart investments. The other example is in the health sector, where we work with the government, the private sector, and others to ensure that tuberculosis financing is done in a way that's more sustainable. And of course, Pak Benny talked about our exceptional work together on countering stunting. Again, by providing resources and expertise across different important stakeholders who can have an increased impact, always with the government and the local communities as partners. It takes everyone involved to really make sure that we're being effective, efficient, and creating the impact that we all desire.
Thank you, Pak Jeffrey. You mentioned Pak Benny. Pak Benny, can you confirm what Pak Jeffrey just said? And
I can
also
confirm that.
yeah.
Yeah, and I just visited him at the booth downstairs, so I can vouch for what he said.
But also from your perspective, Pak Benny, ensuring effectiveness is not easy, right? Because you're from the philanthropy side or from the business side. How you work together with the government, with non-government, ensuring that each dollar or each cent you spend is effective.
This is a very important question, and I have to say it is the crux of what the foundation is focusing on in the near future. I would say three areas that is very important to ensure effectiveness. First of all, capacity building. Secondly, MLE, monitoring, learning, and evaluation. And thirdly, internal competencies. I'll elaborate on each of them. Capacity building. It is precisely because of the need to bridge this capacity gap that we worked with Bappenas and UNDP 5 years ago to set up the SDG Academy Indonesia. Because we realized that in order to fulfill the SDG goals, it is important to localize the understanding in the local context. A lot of times there is a need to train the leadership, both in the government, the local government, and also non-state actors, to work together in order to fulfill some of these programs and implement them on the ground. Financing mechanism alone is not enough. So that's first. Secondly, we believe in evidence-based impact, which is why it is very important to build capacity and capabilities in what we call measurement, learning, and evaluation, so that what we do generate evidence in order to be able to give assurance for additional funding to come in. So MLE is a very, very important piece, and within our foundation, we have doubled down on this effort. In fact, even elevating it to a global function. So I have a C-suite kind of expert advising me on MLE matters. Thirdly, which is also equally important, is the internal capabilities of the organization. I think if you look at traditional financing, there are theories and there are guidelines to help us. But as we move towards multi-partnership, multi-stakeholder partnership, it is important that different contributors have got slightly different risk appetite and also expectations of returns. Now, if you look at the traditional way of looking at things, high risk, high return, right? But for philanthropy, actually it is high risk, but no return. So it's kind of counterintuitive, right? How do you price in impact?
Yeah.
That's a whole school of thought. And that's why I think the professionals themselves, even people working in finance and legal within the team, need to understand how the paradigm has to change. Not because we are not looking for returns, but we are looking for a broader definition of return, what we call impact, which is difficult to price, but I think is equally important. So that's my 3 points. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pak Benny. Minister, I know you have shared a bit about the experience in Congo, but now in your position as the Minister for Planning, how do you, in our terms here, monitor, evaluate, but also oversee the development, making sure that this development financing is effective from the government level, experience in your country?
Voilà. Tout d'abord, ce qui est important, c'est que c'est l'appropriation. Donc ça, c'est les premiers éléments très importants pour nous. Nous pensons que nous devons être maîtres de notre processus de développement et nous avons tracé un cadre très précis du plan national, plan stratégique de développement pour notre pays, que nous avons partagé avec tous les partenaires. Nous travaillons avec le monde privé, les organisations de la société civile, tous les bailleurs de fonds. Nous faisons en sorte que dans ce processus de détermination de cadres qui puissent participer et par là rentrer dans nos priorités d'aujourd'hui. Aujourd'hui, nous venons déterminer notre cadre stratégique, nous avons déterminé les priorités très clairement. Nous avons la question de la gouvernance, la diversification, la question du capital humain, la question du développement durable et la grande question des infrastructures. Et donc, nous voulons que tout le monde puisse s'aligner sur ces priorités-là. Et nous voulons que les projets qui sont alignés soient des projets de qualité dans ça, pour nous permettre justement d'arriver à réaliser nos objectifs. Et ensuite, nous voulons à ce que nous puissions avoir un processus d'évaluation dans ce que nous faisons. C'était peut-être le point qui n'était pas très développé, mais aujourd'hui, nous sommes en train de travailler sur un delivery unit qui va nous permettre de voir de quelle manière, à chaque étape des financements des projets, nous pouvons nous assurer que chaque projet est réalisé et est atteint de manière efficace. Et cela permet aussi aujourd'hui de nous rendre compte de la valeur de chaque dollar dépensé dans notre économie. Aujourd'hui, la question est lancée. Nous allons organiser le partage de notre plan avec des bailleurs de fonds et qui puissent réaliser quels sont nos vrais besoins et la manière dont nous voulons ensemble marcher avec ça. Mais la grande volonté, c'est d'abord nous, et nous voulons être maîtres de ce processus-là. Voilà comment nous voulons nous assurer que nous avançons réellement dans l'accélération des ODD. Merci.
Thank you, Minister. Very interesting. You mentioned a keyword that rings a bell to me: delivery unit. I think it's good to see and to learn from you that the government needs to be really serious in addressing this. Ibu Mari, last but not least in this round, before we take questions and comments from the floor, what do you think, Ibu Mari? This is now your real business, ensuring effectiveness. Please share with us.
Yes, thank you. No, but if I speak then as one of the coaches of GPDC, I would like to start out by saying that the development effectiveness agenda has evolved since it was established in 2011. That is when the GPDC was established. That is also when we agreed on the 4 shared principles. And just to repeat the 4 principles, we are talking about country ownership, we are talking about the focus on results, we are talking about inclusive partnership, we are talking about transparency and mutual accountability. And the lesson learned that we have right now is that these principles are as valid today as they were in 2011, maybe even more. And I know that we are working in a totally different landscape today than we were in 2011. But having said that, if we are serious about getting back on track with the SDGs, then we need to go back and think about what does these four principles actually mean. And we have lots of evidence. We have evaluated under the GPDC umbrella what works and what doesn't work. And there are, of course, mixed results when we're talking about the effective development cooperation. And if we are honest about the challenges, for example, we know that there is a tension between short-term results and the focusing on long-term impact. We know that we are all emphasizing the importance of inclusive partnership, but having said that, is civil society always invited and is able to participate in the partnership?
Yeah.
Is the private sector always there when, and if they are there, do we also give them the attention that they need? And also from a private sector perspective, they also need to look at it from they also need to have a greater focus on development impact. So that is another thing that is important. And I think that from a transparency point of view, sometimes we as development partners have not been as transparent as we could have been or should have been, which means that it's difficult for partner countries to plan their budget priorities. Sometimes there's a lack of transparency and accountability also when we're towards citizens in a partner country, which is another challenge from time to time. So just to wrap this up, I think that by addressing these challenges, and here I would just like to emphasize that GPDC is an excellent platform for this because it means that all stakeholders can take part in a dialogue at the country level, which can actually also then come up with a more suitable action plan. So I will stop there because I realize I ran out of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibu Mari. Now, we have already had 2 rounds of conversation here, and I would like to see and to test the water and to check whether you have anything to say, to comments, or to ask the panelists, or you have your own ideas. I just want to see first how many hands, how many of you would like to speak, because I need to exercise my rights, to be a bit authoritarian here. 1, 2, 3, oh my God. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You too? No? Okay, 6. We were late for 12 minutes. If one of you, each of you speak, address your question, 1 minute, we will have enough time for everyone here to address your question shortly, concisely, and also to wrap things up, okay? So can anyone help me with the mic? 3, so again, hands from that side. How many? 1, 2, 3. Okay, please. 1 minute, your name, where you're from, question.
Thank you.
You are not the next speaker. You are the, okay, please.
Thank you, Pak Yanuar. I'm Arya from Amarta. My question goes to Ibu Gita Sabarwal. You mentioned a couple of times about the importance of private sectors in contributing to the accelerations of financing for the SDGs. For instance, my company, Samarta, we've dispersed over $800 million this year alone in working capital and created 200,000 new jobs in the villages. My question is, what's your recommendations on how we better align between what we have done as a private sectors with the national initiative, let's say led by Pak Yanuar, so that what we have done at private sectors could also contribute to Pak Yanuar's target in accelerating the Indonesia's SDGs objectives? Thank you.
Not my target, come on. Okay, next. I see 3 hands over there. Ibu, please. Your name and your question, please.
Morning, everyone. My name is Felicity from the UK government. Thank you very much to, firstly to Pat Yanuar for moderating and to all
Felicity,
panelists.
welcome.
My question is, so you've all made really interesting points on scaling up financing and improving effectiveness. I was wondering, what are your hopes or expectations for the Summit of the Future happening later this month? How can that drive ambition and move the dial on some of the points you've been suggesting? Thanks.
Any specific to whom, Bugita? Because you speak about Summit of the Future, or all of us here?
If you'd like to speak on it, but really anyone
Okay.
who has a view,
Okay.
you're welcome. Thanks.
Thank you, Bu Felicity. I think there were, okay, please, Ibu, and also sir, yes.
Thank you very much. I come from Uganda. I work for the Cabinet Secretariat. My take on this is now that we are increasingly seeing that we are challenged with the achievement of the SDGs, we need to, I think, look at the tailored strategies, country-tailored strategies, so that we can bust the rational bounded model, because countries have their own strategies. Now, if we encourage these ones, we shall be able, one, to leverage the experience, but also the technology and then the partnerships that she talked about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. And I still see one hand from there. Okay, please.
Thank you. My name is Maharani from Bappenas. Maybe my question is for most of the speakers. How to ensure the equitable access for the Global South country, for the ODA and also the available sources in the market, also from the private sectors. Thank you.
Difficult questions, Mbak Maha. Okay, now this side. I think I saw 3 hands at least. Please, 1, 2, and 3. Okay.
Selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi.
I will not ask a question to save you some time. Just a couple of thoughts, because I think we could spend a whole day on this. But just a couple of thoughts. I think first and foremost on the Sustainable Development Goals, I think we should keep in mind making the case why they are so important. Because we may take it for granted, whereas in the world in which we are, they are so important. And we have to look beyond already. What's going to happen beyond 2030.
Yep.
So we have, in communication, the advocacy, because sometimes we take it for granted.
Yep.
And that's related to a point that I think Gita made as well. We have excellent returns on investment, but we need to put that forward so that we can make it clear this is not charity. This is an investment in society. This is investment in the globe. This is investment into our futures. And if I can be a little bit provocative, there's enough capital in the world. But we need to have those partnerships, including with the private sector. And partnerships is not only about money. Partnerships is also about knowledge. It's about scaling up. And there are enormous opportunities for this. Most of the challenges or problems have solutions, how to better connect effectively and efficiently. I have many more points to make, but I will not do that now. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Maybe you can introduce yourself, sir, for everyone. Your name and you're from?
Sorry, I took that for granted. Yes.
Yeah, because I know you, but the rest.
Peter van Rooij, ILO Partnerships.
Terima kasih, Pak Peter. Please.
Good morning. I'm Kemal from Bappenas. I'm talking as my personal capacity. I just want to just get a quick idea. Why don't I foresee as a SDGs tsunami? Okay, the lagging of achieving this target. I use a metaphor as a tsunami of the global scale. Okay. Then I remember our experience using the multi-donor fund format, how we tackle and recover, rehabilitate, rebuild Aceh. And if you remember, everybody's coming together and we manage the multi-donor fund in such a way then achieve all those targets. Why don't we see now we are facing the global tsunami and use the same model to make an effective financing. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Kemal. Anyone else? Okay, please, Ibu. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Yanwal. My name is Popis Marina from the Faculty of Economics and Business University of Gadjah Mada. I also work for UN Women Indonesia and Green Finance Institute, UK. So for the last 15 years, I've been working on SDGs financing issues. So I found that developing countries, including Indonesia, cannot heavily depend on government budget and as well as ODA. So I found that private mobilization, private investment mobilization is the key important point. So I would like to ask of you, and you can share experience, to what extent can we combine public ODA with private capital to attract private investment? Because I found it's very difficult to attract private investment participant. So I also asked to Tonoto, to what extent can we combine public or philanthropy fund like you to attract, again, private investment? I have been working with Green Climate Fund and also all of international funding, but it's still difficult to attract private investment participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bu Bobby. That's the difference, when an academic asks you a question, right? Anyway, so we have in total 7 commentators, but only 6 questions because Pak Peter wanted to share his views with us. Maybe if you can tackle, well, it's up to you which part. I will have my notes. So if there are questions remain unanswered, I will then get back to you. But I think Ibu Gita, you can talk a bit about the alignment and then about Summit of the Future, I think from Ibu Felicity probably, and then the experience from Uganda, maybe Minister, if you can share your experience, especially on the tailored strategy, yes, private sector as well. And then maybe Ambassador, if you can address a bit about ODA, and both Pak Jeffrey and Pak Benny, if you can share your experience on but combining public ODA, private capital to attract more investment. And the questions from Maharani on the equitable access. Maybe Ibu, I think you can tackle that questions. And lastly, I know it's quite difficult from Pak Kemal because Pak Kemal wants us to see this problem with SDGs financing as like a tsunami. In Indonesia's experience, when it happened, we have this special, we used to have this multi-donor sort of trust helping it. Can we do it with SDGs? I think that's open for everyone. While you answer, because our time is up quite soon, so maybe you can also, if you have any message left that you haven't said, maybe you can just. Who want to start? Ibu Gita, please. And then.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pa Yanvar. I'm going to use this opportunity to say 3 things.
Yes.
Right.
A bit closer, Ibu. Again. Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use this opportunity to say 3 things.
Yeah, sure.
Indirectly answering the questions.
Yep.
And I want to talk about, firstly, about development effectiveness.
Okay.
Yeah. In the UN, with the UN wants to work very closely with the government, in this case, Bappenas, to assess development effectiveness. That's why our cooperation framework with the government of Indonesia, the results framework of our cooperation framework is premised on your targets and goals.
Okay.
Right? Extremely critical. This is what His Excellency, the Minister from DRC, raised as well.
Yep.
Government has to be in leadership position. And this indirectly links to the point about private sector. There is no one-size-fits-all solution for how private sector and government priorities align. Ideally, they should align.
Yep.
And we are seeing this in this country. Last week, I was with a state-owned bank participating in, this is a bank that has signed up to the UN Principles of Responsible Banking, making available long-term affordable financing for low-income, energy-efficient housing, which is a priority for the government and definitely a priority of the president-elect as well. This alignment is what we want to see more of. And this requires a joined-up, coordinated approach. Within the UN system, we are leveraging the Indonesia Global Compact Network together with yourself, Bappenas, to make sure this alignment is brought to bear. It doesn't happen very often, but that's an attempt to bring that alignment, to ensure effectiveness. My last point that I want to make, and this is important for us, is on the private sector. Yep. How can we mobilize more of private sector financing? We have to leverage the bond markets, not just government bond markets. I know you are, Bappenas is discussing a coral bond and an orange bond, right? UN has worked very closely with the Ministry of Finance for SDG bonds and blue bonds. I think we need to engage with the corporate sector on leveraging the bonds for priorities that the government has identified, which makes it a win-win. Secondly, we want to leverage the carbon markets, right? Because this creates incentives for the private sector and communities that are living off, on the fringes of forests to generate economic value. We aren't doing it enough. In Thailand, we were working through voluntary carbon markets. We want to do much more of that. Thirdly, we want to leverage Islamic financing. In this country,
Islamic financing,
it's $160 billion of assets.
Okay.
160 billion.
Okay.
We've got UNICEF that is working with the Zakat Fund in the province of Aceh and trying to leverage that for safe drinking water and sanitation. We need more of such examples, right? This is, and lastly, the capital markets. And I'm going to be very quick on this. In Thailand, we set up the ESG fund together with investors and asset managers based on incentives provided by government, which means more monies get into stocks that are verifying the carbon footprint. And it automatically creates an incentive for more companies to disclose the carbon footprint and the carbon plan, right? Net zero plan, which is what exactly what we want. So I'm going to pause there and hand it back.
Thank you. I know the time is up, but one, because Ibu Felicity asked about your expectation on the Summit of the Future. Very quickly on that.
On the Summit of the Future, and we can sit down for a bilateral chat.
Yeah, over coffee maybe, but now we need this.
Over coffee, because this is a long drawn-out conversation. We are in our second draft. You know that second draft has been put forward, and there are 5 key elements as part of the Summit of the Future. What shape and form it's going to take will depend on member states like yourselves, amongst others. And how this gets rolled out by governments is the critical point. Right? And we are waiting for a final draft to be approved so that we can kickstart the partnership with the government to take this forward. And in many ways, this is the footprint of the future. Whether we like it or not, this is where strategic foresight is being brought to bear to address some of the challenges that are going to be critical in the next decade. So I'm going to pause here.
Thank you. For those of you, all of you who are interested in what's going on, then what's next after SDGs, follow this Summit of the Future. I think it will kickstart on the 23rd of September during the UNGA. I'm not promoting the UN, but I think this is very important for all of us here. Minister, maybe you can share your experience addressing the question from a gentleman from Uganda.
C'était sur la stratégie, si j'ai bien compris.
Yep. Yes. Yeah.
La stratégie pour chaque pays.
Yes.
C'est ce que j'avais. OK.
Yeah.
Alors, c'est ce que je disais, en fait, que pour la RDC, en tout cas, c'est ce que nous avons pris comme option. Donc, nous devons déterminer notre propre stratégie, où nous déterminons toutes les priorités pour permettre justement à tous les partenaires ou toutes les parties prenantes de pouvoir s'aligner sur ce que nous voulons faire, afin de nous permettre de réaliser les vrais besoins dont le pays aujourd'hui aspire pour faire avancer les objectifs de développement durable. Mais je voulais profiter aussi pour répondre sur la question des privés, parce que là aussi c'est un travail qui se fait au niveau de la République démocratique du Congo. Aujourd'hui, nous venons de revoir, par exemple, la feuille sur les climats des affaires, parce que ça, c'est un point important pour nous, pour essayer d'attirer davantage le monde privé. Mais il y a aussi la question sur des grandes priorités comme les infrastructures. Aujourd'hui, nous venons de définir un nouveau cadre légal sur le partenariat public-privé, encore une fois, pour sécuriser l'investissement privé. Nous développons des zones industrielles avec des facilités fiscales et administratives spéciales pour leur permettre justement d'avoir ce goût de pouvoir investir dans l'industrie, parce que c'est l'étape importante pour notre pays pour essayer de développer, dans les cadres de la diversification, les chaînes de valeur qui permet justement d'avancer, absorber le chômage et ainsi de suite. Donc voilà une série de choses que nous faisons dans le cadre du monde privé pour les attirer à mieux travailler avec nous dans la réalisation des ODD.
Okay.
Merci.
Thank you, Minister. Ambassador, do you want to say something about ODA that Ibu Maharani asked about ensuring equitable access to ODA?
The question was about the funds of ODA, or what was it?
How to ensure equitable access to ODA?
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't have the experience of working inside the ODA system. I'm working from the experience of being someone who has to work with all the agencies in my government, and therefore I have a different perspective. So perhaps my views are not going to be, from that point of view, representative of the AOD institutions. But what I can tell you is that you have, of course, two parties, the recipient and the donor, and from the donor point of view, usually the donor establishes priorities, geographical, sectorial, a number of issues which are chosen as to represent the priorities of the national government in order to be able to allocate funds for AOD. From that point of view, this is fine because it is in accordance with your own political system, and therefore everything is clearly supported by the society at large in your home country. But on the other hand, of course, the recipient country might not be happy with these choices. The way to arrive to a balance in that respect is through dialogue, of course. You have to meet the two parties, and you have to make sure that the two parties are able to communicate each other how they work, and therefore find a common solution to that. But from the point of view of a guy like me who is not working in that system but has to support them, for instance, for me it's very unpleasant my experience here in Indonesia because my AOD people in Spain, the way they work, and they can do a lot of things, is not bringing the things that I would like them to bring to a country like Indonesia, because you are, thanks God, a middle-income country. So you are not as deserving, thanks God, as other societies. So what can we do? That's why I was insisting so much in my intervention about the TOSSD. We can work with you through the TOSSD, and we are so happy to do so. And we would like to be your best partner in the world from that point of view. But my point, as I see the guy who is outside the system, is that by being so analytical sometimes, by being so reflecting on how we analyze and divide and label and do these kind of things, in the end of the day, I have the personal feeling that sometimes we are defeating the purpose of allocating funds for development.
I see. Okay.
It's fine to analyze things and to be structured in your thoughts, but you need to be practical. And be practical means basically, in my personal point of view, sitting with your partner, exchanging views on what is to be done, and do it together.
Okay.
And then you call it the way you wish.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now, Pak Benny and Jeffrey, although the question came from Ibu Poppy, but from different perspective, basically combining this government effort and private capital, how we can attract more impact investment or investment that matters more in development.
Yeah.
Very quickly, Pak Benny, and then Pak
I will
Jeffrey.
address that, and also want to talk a bit about alignment.
Yeah.
I actually like the comment earlier on about actually there's not a lack of resources.
Yeah.
There's not a lack of capital. It's just a matter of, I think the challenge here is to actually rebalance our effort in this spectrum of investment and giving. I think pure investment for returns versus pure giving without any return. Where do we meet?
Yeah.
I alluded to it earlier about having this common language, having this internal capacity, internal capability to do that. I think that's very important, and that's what, as a foundation, we are trying to encourage. I mentioned earlier too about the SDG Academy, which we worked with Bappenas and UNDP to establish more than 5 years ago. It is our effort to bring together different partners in order for us to see a common goal, and in this case, SDG. It is important because we need to create value proposition for the different stakeholders within the ecosystem. I'm happy that in the 5 years that SDG Academy Indonesia has been operating, we have trained more than 15,000 people, both local government and non-state actors, certified almost 400 SDG leaders, out of whom I think about half of whom are from private sector and non-state actors. That is very encouraging because it shows that there's interest within the sector to be able to participate in this. The challenge is to how to unlock more of those. I think this issue is not a problem for government to solve on its own. Neither it is a problem that philanthropy can solve on its own. I mentioned, annual global philanthropic giving of 800 billion, still a gap to the 4.2 trillion you are talking about. Surely and definitely we need private sector to come in. I think a few things. I think start with a common language. I joke about high risk, no return in the philanthropic sector. We need to change the language of returns to be one of impact. And learn how to price it, because only then will we be able to present a value proposition for the private sector. Another example, I mean, my legal people have trouble working with private sector lead lawyers because for private sector it's all about downside protection. Right? But in this case, how do you define downside in an impact? I think these are all very pertinent issues, but important for us to come together, have a common language, have a common goal, and therefore work together for a common good.
Common language, common goal, work together. Jeffrey.
So a couple things are important that Benny mentioned that I want to inculcate. Value proposition. Companies need to make money. So the market needs to be there. The second thing is they need to find ways to buy down the risk. And that's where organizations like USAID can help. And I'll tell a bit of a story. In 1997, USAID partnered with Starbucks Coffee to invest in Toraja, Indonesia, in South Sulawesi. 27 years later, hundreds, and I mean probably $350 million of coffee has been purchased from Indonesia by Starbucks. Right? And sold all over the world. When you go to a Starbucks anywhere on earth, Christmas time or holiday times, they'll sell a special coffee. It'll be called Sumatra coffee. That effort is a combination of USAID buying down the risk for Starbucks by investing in community-driven improvements at the farm level that then lead to suppliers supplying Starbucks with high-quality coffee that gets sold all over the world. To talk to Pak Kamal's tsunami experience. 2008, USAID invested with Starbucks again in Aceh, Gayo coffee, another one you see on the menu of Starbucks. And also in Sumatra, in 2015, Starbucks built the Farmer Support Center that I just visited last week in Berastegi, Karo, North Sumatra. This is how USAID partners with Starbucks, with farmers, suppliers, the government of Indonesia, to ensure that a company can make profits, farmers at the farm level can make livelihoods, but also production happens in a more sustainable and circular way that ensures shade coffee, Arabica coffee is grown with fruit trees that provide, or mahogany trees that provide incomes, not just for coffee, but in other ways to make that coffee farm more sustainable. And this is how you work together to ensure value proposition for the company, sustainability for the planet, but also buying down risk so that it's not an investment that is done individually. And what you find is that companies, when they do things like attend at SDG Academy, they know that what's good for business is also good for the environment, and it's also good for the farmer. And this is how you have a global impact like Starbucks is having with Indonesian coffee. So make sure you buy Sumatra, Gayo, or Toraja coffee next time you're in a Starbucks.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Finally, Ibu Mari.
Yes, thank you very much. And I can echo a previous speaker, but I would also like to say that how to solve this is very much about partnership, and that is also where I started my presentation today. But if I look at it from a development partners perspective representing SIDA, I see that in addition to providing grants, I think that we also provide a very flexible guarantee instrument. We provide challenge funds, we have challenge funds, we have PPDPs and so on, and we are in many partnerships with lots of different actors and so on. And that is also something that if you're interested in working more closely with us, please contact our embassies or look at our webpage. And in addition to that, I would also like to say that I think it's important to put a lot of time and effort into the preparation of the FFD4. In order for that to be successful, we need to make sure that we are participating in the different PrepCom meetings that have already started. And if we do that well, then we could have a strong commitment as a result of the FFD4. So that is what I'm hoping for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Mary. Join me in giving a round of applause to all speakers for wonderful contribution. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends, I know this is a very rich discussion, and I do not think I can do justice by trying to give a summary. However, I tried to put some keywords. If you can help me put some keywords from the discussion. I don't know whether it does some justice, but these are the keywords that you have been talking about, and also the comments from the floor in our effort to ensure that we have greater commitments, greater actions, because what is in front of us, I think, is a tremendous job, making sure that SDGs is achieved. And I think only with the stronger commitments from all of us, government, private sector, civil society, academia, international organizations, coupled with innovative and impactful financing strategies, I think these are the essential things we need to turn SDGs from ambition into reality. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the forum. Thank you.
Thank you, moderators, and also all distinguished speakers. Yes, please remain on stage. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please give your big round of applause for the fruitful discussion this morning for the first session. Yes, please remain on stage. We will have a group photo together. Yes. Okay. Please make one row for the group photo together. Photographer ready? Yes. Everybody, please look to the camera. On my count, please. 3, 2, 1. Smile. Okay, once again. 3, 2, 1. Smile. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, you may kindly return to your seat. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the first session of the parallel thematic session of High Level Forum and Multi-Stakeholder Partnership 2024. Yes, and we still have the other session, and the second session will be the topic, the unlocking growth, overcoming barriers and optimizing investment returns through smart outbound inbound strategies. Will be held about 11 a.m. Central Indonesia time. Okay, so this is the end of the first session, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us in the first session. And if you want to join for the next session, please join until the last session today. Okay, and now you may please enjoy the coffee and tea that we already provided for you at the foyer. And we will continue with the next session, which is second session at 11 past 10. Yes, 11 past 10 a.m. So it's about 20 minutes. 20 minutes from now, we will start with the second session. Okay, once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much and enjoy the coffee and tea. And we will continue again with the next session. Thank you. Once again, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite you to please enter the maiden room and please be seated. We are about to begin the second parallel session of high-level forum on multi-stakeholder partnerships 2024 shortly. Thank you.